Hello. Today I will be featuring the Hindenburg, although this won't be exactly my average Hindenburg game, since the idea here is of course that I attempt to use HE as much as possible, or well, more than I would probably normally use HE. In fact, the last time I tried to test the HE on the Hindenburg, the only thing I ended up doing was shooting AP. I was intending to test the HE, but people gave me so many broadsides that I couldn't resist using AP instead, because regardless of all the HE buffs, like it doesn't matter how much penetration buffs HE gets, the raw damage of the AP is pretty much always superior. So yeah, pretty much. So this game I am intentionally trying to use as much HE as possible. Might not be actually, for that reason, I might not consider it the most optimal of gameplay examples, but the whole purpose here is of course to give this HE a try. Now, as I mentioned, I don't consider this penetration buff to be as big as some people out there do, because, well, it's kind of like putting IFHE on 203mm guns, which is something I've never really recommended that much, because it doesn't really allow you to bypass any that important thresholds. And that's kind of the case here as well. Don't get me wrong, it is a buff, it's a nice buff, and it's of course always buffing the Hindenburg is welcome, even though I would have preferred better AP penetration angles instead of this HE penetration buff, since I don't understand why they keep buffing the HE over and over again when the bread and butter of the German ships is supposed to be the AP. Still though, it's not like I consider the Hindenburg a weak ship, and it's not like I particularly consider it needed this kind of buff, but it was just a strange aspect to be buffed here. Still though, this game, Baltimore, angled, I would probably use HE here regardless, since, well, angled Baltimore is actually quite tanky, and of course I'm going to start harassing him with the HE as much as possible. Now, while the HE Alpha isn't that good, I mean, I'm not exactly breaking any records with these volleys that I'm shooting, the damage isn't really that impressive. The fire chance is pretty damn good, because, well, I run the reload mod on my Hindenburg, so 8.8 second reload on these guns means that you're going to be starting quite a lot of fires. And of course, thanks to this new penetration buff, well, even without it, the constant damage is pretty okay. And against an angled Baltimore, it's not like you would be dealing much damage to begin with, so pretty good. The Fletcher shows up to smoke him up though, or at least I assume it's the Fletcher that smoked him up, so I can no longer harass him. Much like I would play the Hindenburg in any opening, especially on a big huge map like Islands of Ice, I am playing it pretty damn safe. As a cruiser, you in general, you don't want to be, you want to conserve HP at the start of the game by playing fairly passive. I mean, unless of course you're a radar ship, but if I was a radar ship, my positioning right now would be pretty okay, since I could radar all of sea and help capture it in that way. But overall, you don't really want to be the first guy in. The issue here is of course that my battleships are all hiding behind me, which is very common. You can see I got, what, 3 German battleships. These are supposed to be the hydring, pushing, brawling battleships, and they're all hiding behind me. The Shimokaze has been dead for a while, so I'm trying to inform the battleships behind me that they can in fact push in now, because there's no Shimokaze around. They have a hydro in case of the Fletcher, so they should be able to push, but you know, battleships in general, they don't really want to be the first guy in. So simply because I want to shoot at something and I would otherwise be out of range, I push in myself, but I don't particularly recommend being the first guy into a cap as a cruiser, especially at high tiers, especially as a Hindenburg, which isn't particularly stealthy. But I don't want to sit back and wait for these guys to get the thumb out of their ass, so I push in to get some damage done at least. I instantly get targeted by 3 people, not surprising. I assume it's pretty much all of these battleships that are targeting me, and we can already see the incoming fire, but I am angled and I am turning away, and at this distance you shouldn't have too many issues dodging the shells. That's the third. I was trying to hit the Bismarck down there, trying to lob some shells over the island. The Hindenburg isn't really the best at lobbing shells over the island because well, it got pretty flat arcs. It's one of the strengths of the arcs is that they're pretty damn flat, pretty damn fast. So unlike a Des Moines that could easily lob over various islands here, you're gonna struggle a bit with the Hindenburg. Now, at this point, I'm switching to AP. I can't resist that. This guy's giving me so much broadside. Actually, as soon as I mention that, he starts angling, but whatever, I'll shoot this Bismarck instead, because this is how you usually play Hindenburg. You look for the best broadside and then you shoot that, because, well, broadsides equal great damage, great AP damage. But that guy is turning away, so I'll just keep working on this Friedrich der Grosse. He damage cons, which is of course great for me, but as you can see, that was, even with all these penetrations, the ultimate issue of this HE is the lack of alpha damage. And you can see it here. This is not impressive damage at all. What, 1.6k for a volley? And then when I switch to AP, since he is giving me broadside, I mean, let's look what our AP does. Yeah, the damage difference is absolutely staggering still between AP and HE. So that's why ultimately this buff, why I don't consider it that big of a deal, is because most of the time I'm still going to be shooting AP in my Hindenburg. And honestly, I shoot HE. The only times I shoot HE in a Hindenburg is when I cannot shoot AP. And that's a pretty important distinction. When AP cannot get any penetrations, that's when it's worth using HE. But the rest of the time, AP is still going to be the absolute dominating ammo type. And this penetration, as I said, this is why I don't consider this penetration buff to be that big of a deal. I've seen a lot of hype people going, oh, it's so amazing, it's so amazing. But the core issue here is that the alpha damage is so low that most of the time the HE simply isn't worth it. Even for the fires, it's not worth it. I mean, you can get 12k broadside volleys on battleships with the AP. Like, easily get 12k broadside volleys. If battleships gives you broadside, you can get 12k per volley. And then when you shoot HE, you get like what, max 4k at the absolute max, and you have to rely on RNG to get fires and all of this shit. And that's why I don't really consider it that big of a deal. I think people have overblown this HE buff for the high tiers a significant amount. I think it's people who might already be using the HE far too much that consider this buff to be such a massive deal. But for people who really don't use the HE as much and basically know that the full focus of the ship is the AP, it's not that big of a deal. It's really not that big of a deal. Anyway, I mean, I actually want to sail across. I would love to sail across the sea towards where my Gearing and Ibuki is, if you look on the minimap. I kind of hoping this Bismarck will let me pass, but he is dead set determined on sailing hard to the left towards the enemy, well, I guess the cluster of enemy ships here. So I don't really have an option here. My whole plan of pushing into the cap and kind of trying to contest B from an unexpected angle isn't going to be working, so I'm gonna see if I can get around this flank instead. Now, as I mentioned before, in the Hindenburg, you don't really want to be pushing with your battleships in the middle of them, because ultimately you want to shoot at the enemy from an unexpected angle. That's how you play the Hindenburg. You see where your battleships are, you see where the enemy battleships are, okay, you go, okay, these guys have to angle against my battleships here. And then I will move to one of the flanks where I'm able to use my AP on the broadsides instead. That's the basic Hindenburg tactics you use to play the ship. You position yourself on a flank and you get an unexpected angle that allows you to use your extremely powerful AP. However, my plan of trying to get around to the right flank didn't work because the battleship kind of blocked my path, so I'm instead going to go around the left flank. The carrier is attempting to strike the battleship next to me, so I pop defensive AA and focus fire these planes. I think it's tier 8 planes. It doesn't really matter. Even without running any sort of AA build, just running defensive AA, you absolutely shred planes in the Hindenburg, and he's not going to have any chance of striking him past me. So honestly, bad choice to go for any sort of target near a Hindenburg. Let's see if I can finish this Alabama. Once again, this alpha damage per HE shell or per HE volley, not that impressive. I've seen a lot of Reddit threads and a lot of people talking about what a massive big deal this is, and how people are farming withers and stuff, and I can't help but feel that... See, that was... So far, that's the best volley we've gotten so far. 9 HE hits on a single target, and we only got 1 shatter. So that was 9 pens, and that was 6.3k. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty okay, but it's still really not that special. Like, that's ultimately the whole case. If that's the first time we get a good, solid HE volley, that's somewhat impressive, and you can pretty much accidentally get the same kind of damage with AP. Which is why this buff, this HE penetration buff, by far benefits the Nürnberg and the Königsberg the most, because they got the 150mm guns, and of course, as I mentioned in the past, IFHE benefits 150 and 155mm guns the absolute most. So yes, it's a buff, yes, it's a welcome buff, it's not really that big of a deal, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the end of it. Got 2 fires burning on this Mistborg, which is nice. Once again, the fire chance is pretty damn nice. That's still very true. The fire chance is very nice, and of course this is quite welcome. The Friedrich Grosse is running Hydro, so he spots the incoming Minotaur Torps, which is of course excellent. I want to get rid of this Bismarck before I start focusing on the Minotaur, because I'm gonna have a hard time angling against them both. So I need to get rid of this Bismarck ASAP. He's giving me a lot of broadside. Could use AP at this point, but I think my HE volley will finish him off when he gives that much broadside. And I do get 6 pens, and I do kill him off. Minotaur angling. He's gonna smoke up very soon again. I'm expecting him to. AP is bouncing, he's angled enough that he will bounce my AP, so I switch to HE. This is one of the cases where, well, the bigger issue here is I think there's a bit of a placebo effect going on with the HE. People are using the HE more than they did before, and they think that's why they're getting these results. But the fundamental story here is that the penetration, you don't really bypass that many thresholds, that many armor thresholds with the new penetration, because 203mm guns, it's not recommended using IFHE on them because it's so very situational regarding the thresholds that you bypass, and that kind of hasn't changed. Minotaur trying to shoot me from the smoke. I'm more than happy to shoot him back with some AP. Only get 6 overpens, but I do scare the shit out of him. You can see he stopped shooting at me. He's completely stopped shooting even though I'm spotted. I guess those 6 pens really scared him. Now the Fletcher has smoked up as well, which is fantastic for me because I am undetected, which means the risk of being torped is significantly smaller, and I'm gonna steam towards his smoke. Now the Minotaur cannot maintain this position anymore. The reason he can't maintain his smoke position is because I'm a Hindenburg. There's a high risk of me running Hydro, and sitting in a smoke with someone pushing with Hydra towards you means that you are, well, you're risking being Hydroed and deleted. So I'm expecting him to have to flee, or alternatively he's gonna panic and open up on me. I'm starting to shoot randomly in the smoke to see if whereabouts he could be. My reload is so fast that I can get away with it. He opens up fire towards me, which is great because now I know where he is, and I land 2 citadels on him. Popping the plane, because the plane might spot any incoming torpedoes. Landing some bounces on him. I keep shooting about where he is. Notice that I turn my ship harshly because I am expecting torps at any point. The Minotaur might be using his other flank torps towards me. Constantly changing course, constantly pushing him as well. And at this point I should be soon spotting him. He might be running Hydra, which would spot my torps, or he's not. No, he's close enough that he's not running it, but I do get the broadside, which is all I need to finish him off. He did launch some torps my way, but because I'm constantly changing courses left and right, he has no chance of actually landing them. And I mean, the damage we did, looking at the damage now, 174k. Not really that special for a tier 10, I mean for a Hindenburg game, not really anything special in that sense. I'm sure there are games where you can get like really good HE results. In fact, I made an HE vid in the past about the Hindenburg HE, where I do nothing but I do nothing but shoot HE that entire game, and I farm a bunch of Wither, and I break well over 200k and all of that, and that really hasn't changed. You can still play like that, and it's still pretty okay, but I feel like it's not really the Hindenburg's identity. because if I wanted to spam HE, I'd still rather play the ZA, because the ZA does massive alpha damage and starts a lot of fires. The Hindenburg starts fire, sure, but the alpha damage is completely missing. Hell, I could play the Moskva instead as well, and that's also, or hell, I could just play the Henry. The Henry is also, there's so many HE spammers in this game. There's like 3 different cruisers that you can play as excellent HE spammers. So trying to transform the Hindenburg into one as well, it just doesn't really interest me that much. The Fletcher, where is he? I'm expecting him to pop up soon. If I get spotted, I do get spotted. Oh, and my spotter plane that has popped earlier for the sake of torps, spot the incoming Fletcher torps, so I'm able to, well, I should be able to dodge this quite easily. I'm slowing down just in case, don't want any stupid detonation towards the end from a torpedo in the front magazines. And the carrier spots the Fletcher for me, which is quite useful. Let's see if I can actually finish this guy. A lot of people shooting him. He is of course the last guy they have remaining. And overall, I think the time is gonna run out before we can kill him. I'm trying to turn my guns for him, but not really landing too many shells on him at this point. And he's, yeah, I think the time is gonna run out before I can kill him, which is a shame. So the game ends, and well, I mean, the base XP is pretty nice. This was my daily win. I played this because, well, it was the first Hindenburg game of the day, and I decided, well, let's go full HE spam. 12 fires, that's pretty okay. Not too many citadels, but then again, I was shooting a lot of battleships, and I was mainly focusing on the whole HE aspect. Shot down 18 planes, overall, pretty okay game in that sense. Kraken is, of course, always nice. Team score-wise, 2.8k, which is pretty good. Matchmaking wasn't really the most challenging though. If they had more higher tier battleships, I could of course have farmed higher damage. In fact, I didn't, if you noticed, I don't think I had even used any heals. I might have used like 1 heal this game. I had no health issues at all, and I kind of cruised through this game without issues, which kind of happens when you face lower tiers. But then again, HE fire chance is also better against lower tier battleships, so questionable of how much better it could have really been. Looking at the detailed report though, 213 HE hits. 213 HE hits. 93k damage. I've shot 1/4 of that, I shot AP. 1/4, and I still did half the damage. So on average, my AP shells did twice as much damage as the HE shells. I mean, yes, we have the compensating fires here, which is 43k, that's always nice, but ultimately it comes down to the biggest problem that the Hindenburg has, and that's the complete lack of HE alpha damage. And people underestimate it, but it is a huge deal being able to land those, like Zao landing those 10-12k HE alpha volleys that absolutely wreck the ship. And yes, you make it up for it for reload, but you also have to give a lot of broadside all the time because of that reload. You can't angle like you do in the Zao, you turn, shoot, you turn broadside, shoot, then you angle again, you turn broadside, shoot, and then you angle again. Because of the very fast reload on Hindenburg, which is of course a good thing, it does bring the downside of having to constantly give that broadside if you actually want to use all your guns. Overall potential damage 1.2 million, but we actually only took 17k, and that was mostly because of so much angling and dodging. 52k spotting, which is pretty good considering, well, I was a cruiser. And looking at the detailed, I mean, credits and XP, well, it was my first daily win bonus plus flags, so 37k captain XP. Overall though, I mean, I don't really see the big deal. I'm not really going to change the way I play my Hindenburg. I'm not going to change my build. I still love the build I'm using, and I'll use HE if someone is angled against me, but any chance of a broadside, AP is still the absolute best tool that you have, and that hasn't changed at all. I can show you my build. I'm still using the same build that I recommended in the past, but overall I think that this patch is great for tier 5 and 6 and a nice buff for the rest of the tiers, but it's not really any sort of revolutionary change, and I think people are overblowing the change quite a bit. Anyway, let's move on to my recommended build. Right, starting off, of course, we have the modules. Not much to discuss. Consumable wise, start with the premium heal, follow with premium repair. Honestly, you should be running both of these if you're running a tier 10 cruiser. And if you can afford it, premium defensive AA and premium catapult fighter. If you play on servers where you don't see any carriers at all, like I think NA has quite a rarity of high tier carriers, then you can get away with running Hydro. Personally, I prefer defensive AA just to be able to play that jack of all trades, being able to deal with anything, which is what I enjoy with the Hindenburg. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1, AA range, and I mean, I have a lot of these others, but I don't think any of them are worth it compared to the AA guns range. Faster reload on the main guns, since they are your bread and butter. Damage control system 1, rudder shift, and concealment. With the rudder shift module you get 9.7, which still isn't that good for a cruiser, but you very much need it, because this is quite a clumsy cruiser overall. Big turning circle, quite slow, and not the best rudder shift. Captain perks wise, priority number 1 is of course priority target, followed by adrenaline rush, followed by the additional heal, aka superintendent, followed by concealment expert. Once you have concealment expert, you can follow it up with demolition expert, and now here if you run Hydro, then of course you won't really need vigilance. And I mean, if you give up vigilance, then you can go for something like AFT, you give up preventive and this, and you get AFT or manual AA. Those are options, but because I run defensive AA on my build, I prefer having vigilance as the follow-up, since then I don't need Hydro, because ultimately I find it very, very situational, and I rarely actually get to use it that much. And once you have vigilance, I follow it up with faster reload and high alert, followed by preventive maintenance. The reason for high alert is of course getting the reload on this repair consumable down to 54 seconds, which is very, very useful, because fires are a surprisingly strong tool against the Hindenburg. The Hindenburg has a lot of HP, it's a very high health ship, which means fires of course deal a lot of damage to you, so being able to repair this quicker and more often significantly helps your survivability. And it suits my philosophy of the Hindenburg, which is that I use it as a tool against everything. I can deal with any type of ship that I face, carriers, DDs, cruisers, battleships. You can kind of deal with everything, and that's my philosophy of how to build it. And I've been running this build for a long time, and I've been enjoying it a lot, and I consider it very strong. But of course, how you choose to outfit your ship is your choice. Anyway, that was my Hindenburg kind of update. I hope you guys enjoyed it.